Now, my name is Linda Rourke, and I'm an alumni of Mohawk College, and I am also Senior Development Officer for Academic Partnerships for the Mohawk College Foundation. So it is my pleasure to be part of this incredible establishment. I was a student here, and to be able to come back into my career and work here again has been really incredible. And look at the great things I get involved with. And it really is my pleasure to be moderator for WIT for the last several discussions we've had, but in particular, mental health and well-being symposium. We acknowledge that Mohawk College is situated on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement, and is currently home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. Now, we've been fortunate since the start of the pandemic with the closure of campuses at Mohawk College and all the craziness that goes along with it, that the Center for Teaching and Learning here at Mohawk, which has been supported by our senior leadership team, and has initiated meditation and a yoga practice. So how great is that we can tap into this? This is to help cope, of course, with the mental and physical stress that this situation has had and has posed to many of us. So Michelle Turn, who's our Dean of Students, has been leading one of our meditation sessions and on a weekly basis, which has been incredible. And she's going to start, like, how great is this? We get to start off this program with a meditation. So I'll leave it to you, Michelle, to take us through a version of the meditations that you've been providing so wonderfully to the college.
Thanks so much, Linda. Nice to see you in another context and such a great event. So excited to be a part of this today. So we have a brief 5 minutes. So I'm hoping everybody can just, give yourself the opportunity to just take this 5 minutes with me. I'm going to lead you through a grounding meditation that will hopefully allow you to let go of a little bit of what's been maybe going on in your day or your week or your life, and just center ourselves and bring ourselves here to the present moment. And like Linda mentioned, I'm a research fellow in the College Student Success Innovation Center here and a faculty member and a mindfulness meditation teacher. I use mindfulness meditation as a daily practice for myself to help get to a clear mind, to alleviate some stress, to moderate my reactivity, and those types of things. So it also just helps me for my physical well-being as well, any pain that I'm experiencing. So what we're gonna do over the next 5 minutes is I'm gonna ask you to find a comfortable position, and I'll walk you through that. I will invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable. It's not required. You can turn off your camera if you're not comfortable with anyone looking at you while you're in a mindfulness meditation. And then I'm going to lead you through a little grounding exercise that we'll do that's going to focus on our breath. And then at the end, I'm going to read a poem that hopefully will touch you in some way prior to us wrapping up. To lead into the meditation, I do use some chimes. I will bring them at the start and at the end of our meditation. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, first things first, find yourself in a comfortable posture. Now, this can mean being seated in a chair. You could be seated on the ground. You could be laying down if you'd prefer. You want to find yourself a space where you can be comfortable, but also remain alert. So it's a comfortable posture where preferably your spine is upright. Maybe if you're sitting, then you might have both feet on some surface, on the floor or on another surface. And I want you to allow your eyes to close gently if you're comfortable, or you can just gaze downward, maybe 3 or 4 feet in front of you. What you'll notice is I'm going to speak a little bit with some words, and then I'm going to have some pauses in between the words. Don't be alarmed, I'm still here. We're just going to be slowing down a little bit and finding some place of quiet. And if you haven't practiced mindfulness before, there's no way to do it incorrectly. You are doing just fine just by being here and just listening to my voice. Be kind to yourself if your mind's drifting into this evening or into tomorrow. That's fine. Just notice that. Just be kind to yourself. So I want you to begin by bringing your attention into the areas of contact that your feet are having. I want you to just feel into your feet. And notice how solid the ground is under your feet. Just maybe feeling where your feet are in contact with the surface. Now moving on to the thighs and the buttocks and noticing where they have contact with your chair or the cushion or whatever you're sitting on. Just allowing the ground and the chair to hold and support your body without you needing to do anything. Now moving the attention to your back. Where does your back touch the back of the chair or the ground or the pillow? Can you feel the difference between where there's contact and where there's none? Just notice that. Now moving the attention to your hands, feeling into your hands. Maybe noticing the position of your hands, maybe noticing what they are touching, perhaps the chair, your thighs, or maybe they're touching the other hand. You can ask yourself, how do I know I have hands without looking? You just know, right? We can feel our hands from within. Just notice that. Now I want you to open your awareness up a little broader. I want you to feel your entire body sitting here in this moment on this surface. Now bring the attention to the breath. And as you bring your attention here, you can make the next couple of breaths a little bit deeper so that you can really feel the breath. Some people like to say, I'm breathing in on the inhale and breathing out on the exhale. Ask yourself where you feel the breath the most or where the sensations are the most pleasant. Is it at the nostrils where the air comes in? Is it at the back of your throat? Do you notice it in your chest? Or maybe you feel it in your belly. Wherever you find this breath, I want you to think of this as your anchor. This is your anchor to the present moment. This is where you can come back to over and over again whenever your mind wanders off. Now letting the breath just breathe itself. No need to make it any other way than it wants to be. And when you notice that your attention is somewhere else, just notice it kindly. You can smile at it. Oh, my attention's drifted. And gently bring it back to the breath. Because you haven't made a mistake. Noticing that you've drifted is mindfulness itself. So let me share with you this poem by Mary Oliver. She says, "One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles, mend my life," each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voice behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life that you could save. Mary Oliver, The Journey. Just bring yourself back into the space. I'll invite you to open your eyes when you're ready. And join us here again.
So wonderful, Michelle. Thank you so much. I think as people kind of come back from the meditation, I'd like to ask you, because I know that a lot of people do struggle with finding the time, the space to even begin to meditate. And I think often it's overwhelming. Can you give us just a few tips to walk away with tonight, to at least think of how can we include some level of meditation into our daily life?
Absolutely, Linda. Great question. I'm not unlike anybody in this room that has a million things going on. And when I don't have a million things going on, I grab onto 10 more so that I do. So I don't know if anyone relates to that. So yeah, carving out idle time to devote to myself and my practice, not easy. But some of the things that I do is I don't necessarily force myself to have a sitting meditation if too much is going on. So I do in my car, a little less often now, but even when I'm at a stoplight, we call it sort of mindfulness on the go. As you're just waiting for the stoplight, can you pay attention to the lights? Don't not do that. And can you take 3 breaths in as you're at the lights? Or when you're sitting and waiting at the grocery store, when you're waiting for your turn in line, instead of pulling out your phone, can you just stand there, find your breath at your nose, your chest, your tummy, and just take 2 or 3 breaths, just noticing. So I think there's really availability to us to do this mindfulness practice, and also even little things like chopping vegetables. Sometimes I'll think, okay, let's just chop vegetables. I don't need to figure out the life's problems tonight while I'm cooking, why don't I just focus on what it's like to cut this mushroom over and over and over again? And that's a mindfulness practice. That's being in the present moment and noticing the sensory things that are in our life. So those would be my tips.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Really appreciate you doing this for us tonight and just bringing the importance of meditation to the forefront, which we hear about over and over and over and over again, right? Everyone's talking about it now. And I think, you know, if nothing else, this one of the things the pandemic is doing is bringing maybe a higher level of consciousness when it comes to our mental well-being, our ability to meditate and move our body physically, which of course, as you know, being a yoga teacher myself, breath and physical activity is really important. So thank you once again for doing this for us tonight. Really, really appreciate it. So I'd now like to introduce you to our Vice President of Students International and Alumni, and an all-around fantastic guy, Siebert Addison, to bring the opening remarks on behalf of Mohawk College. Siebert.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you so much, Michelle, for bringing the group through that exercise. I want to say it's so real good to see everybody this evening, and so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Siebert Addison, and I'm the Vice President of Students International and Alumni at Mohawk College. On behalf of all of us at Mohawk, thank you for joining us this afternoon. A special welcome to our industry partners, employees, Mohawk alumni, and especially the students. We are exploring an important topic today, hosted by a group with an equally important mission. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that this and all of our Women in Technology and Trades initiatives are made possible with the generous support of RBC and RBC Future Launch Program. RBC is a great supporter of Mohawk College and in a special way, a great supporter of WIT and creating opportunities for women to succeed in their chosen fields. Mohawk's WIT group was first formed a few years ago as a direct response to a study that indicated that women make up only 3 to 5% of the workforce in skilled trades. A group of strong women leaders at our college got together to try and change the gender gap by encouraging young women to pursue the promising and fulfilling careers in technology and trades. Some of those original WIT members are here with us this afternoon. We are thankful for their leadership and determination. Together, they and many others in this room are supporting and inspiring an exciting new female workforce. It is very timely that this afternoon's focus is on mental health and well-being. The past year has been a challenging one for all of us during COVID-19 with all the restrictions and lockdowns. We are feeling the effect on all our mental health. The impact has been well documented, especially affecting women. Women have experienced greater pandemic-caused unemployment, and they are disproportionately represented in roles that are high risk for infection. Mothers working from home experience greater pressure as they manage children learning from home. Mothers who continue to work in the field feel increased pressure to avoid bringing the virus home or passing it on to an elderly parent in their care. The women studying in STEM fields at Mohawk can find themselves facing those same pressures as they work toward a new career during the pandemic. At Mohawk, we have worked very hard over the past year to ensure that we are positioned to support students' mental health during this unprecedented time. We shifted our existing array of health and wellness services to virtual offerings. As we added specific support messaging and programs in response to this pandemic for our constituents. This will be a major focus of our college efforts this semester as isolation and lockdown fatigue become more acute. It has been said a lot recently, but I would like to reinforce the message. Please take care of your mental health. Today's session will offer you some good insights on how to do that. And if you are struggling, talk to someone and ask for help. Together, we will get through this public health crisis. You're going to hear this evening from some accomplished and inspiring panelists. Manvi, Mona, Allison, and Shannon are groundbreakers. They are here because they want to help you manage your mental health and wellness so that you can succeed in your studies and your careers. Once again, I'd like to thank them and all our guest speakers for their commitment to giving back to the community and their time and expertise. I look forward to gathering with you all and again sometime soon in person to explore, promote, and celebrate women in trades and technology. Until then, take care of yourself and each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Siebert. My dogs are barking. As I said, you never know what's going to happen. I knew it. I said, as soon as I start this, someone's going to pull up into our driveway. So if you hear them, it's all good. They'll hopefully stop soon. Well, as you mentioned, Siebert, this is made possible, this event, and everything we're doing with WIT by so many, and especially because of the support of our amazing partner, RBC. So I would love to ask James Buckland, who's the community manager for Hamilton Mountain Community, to bring some remarks on behalf of RBC.
Thank you very much, Linda. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Sure
Perfect.
can.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for that warm introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. As Linda mentioned, I'm the community manager for RBC on the Hamilton Mountain here, and I actually have deep roots in Hamilton. I was born and raised in Hamilton, went to school at Westdale High School, and actually went to school at Mohawk College many years ago too, as well, in business. So Mohawk carries a special place at my heart for sure. But I'm so thrilled to be here today to talk about this discussion, because, you know, taking opportunities like this to have real conversations around mental health and wellness is so incredibly important. They've always been, of course, important, but I think within the last year with this pandemic, it seems to have amplified. I just recently read an article that really targeted a lot of different groups that are impacted by mental wellness, specifically within 2020. And the research indicates that young people, women, single parents, and newcomers to Canada are feeling the most impacts on their mental health. I was going to share some stats with you here too as well. The data suggests that you know, over 5% of the people that live in Canada for less than 5 years have reported their mental health to be very bad, or 19% of respondents who were born in Canada at the same time. A lot of females have tended to find a lot more stress with everything that's been going on. They basically looked at, you know, having to add more caregivers for children and aging parents, lost their jobs at a faster rate than men. And, you know, a lot of the violence gender-based, predominantly the target women too as well, have also been an increase in the mental health. And it's not just females, it goes in regards to our newcomers to Canada and our young professionals too as well. So, you know, RBC is one of the largest institutions, knows that we can help. We do it not only for our internal employees, but also our external employees too as well. And at RBC, we've launched a new youth mental health wellbeing project, which is our commitment to supporting programs that help youth and families across the country with care and access at the right time. The truth is, many families spend months waiting in line for mental health services, only to be informed that they were in the wrong line, force them to join another wait list while struggling to support their children or young adults at the home. So far, RBC has provided more than $30 million in support of this. Here in Hamilton, we've had a long-standing relationship with St. Joseph Healthcare and our support their Youth and Wellness Center, where youth age 17 to 27 get mental health care that they need more easily. On a personal note, RBC is an employee and a leader, people leader within our organization. I can share that I've never felt more comfortable speaking about mental health in the workplace. We've had a lot of different guest speakers that have actually joined us at RBC to help our employees speak about a lot of those activities that happened. I'll actually share with you a personal story from my end too as well. 2020 was probably one of the most challenging years I've ever had, both personally and professionally. Our industry faced unprecedented times with COVID-19 and really trying to figure out exactly how we manage client needs in this pandemic, because clients still need to get access to their money, but in a more heightened, controlled fashion, which invoked a lot of emotions with our clients. Personally speaking too as well, I did lose my father this year too. So it took a lot of toll on me as a leader, because I had to be there for my team and be strong for them without showing that weakness. And that's what I initially thought, but it actually helped for me to show that weakness with my team, because the humility of me being vulnerable allowed my team to have more trust in me. And I think that was my ability to invoke my mental health. I'm a very private person in nature, but 2020 has taught me a lot about making sure that, you know, at RBC, our culture is always built on one foundation of care for our clients and each other. And I am looking forward to hearing the discussion today. And I know that we'll leave with many takeaways and learnings that I can bring back to my colleagues at RBC. So thank you, Linda.
Thank you, James. And thank you so much for sharing your story as well. Get the conversation going, right? It's what's so important in all of this. Well, I'd love now to introduce our panel for the Mental Health and Wellbeing Symposium. We've got some great people here today. Manvi Bhalla is the co-founder and president of a national youth-led registered nonprofit, Shake Up the Establishment, which uses knowledge translation to improve literacy on the climate crisis and encourages youth to participate in political action in a nonpartisan manner. She is also co-founder and director of a national nonprofit, missINFORMED, which aims to improve the health of women and gender diverse folks. Manvi is a leader in taking an intersectional approach towards addressing inequities in health and well-being for underserved groups. With over 10 years of community organizing experience, Manvi was named one of Canada's top 25 under 25 environmentalists. Welcome, Manvi. Mona Fathieh is an intercultural counselor here at Mohawk College. Mona has 14 years experience as a registered psychotherapist, supporting the mental health and well-being of youth and young adults, refugees, and newcomers to Canada. Her parents came to Canada as refugees in the 1980s and eventually settled in Ontario to raise a family. She holds a bachelor's degree in life sciences, a master's degree in psychology, and postgraduate certificates in cognitive behavioral therapy and trauma therapy. She is dedicated to working with individuals and populations as they overcome various difficulties. In her spare time, she loves traveling, being in nature, and helping youth find meaningful ways to contribute to the betterment of their neighborhood. Welcome, Mona. And now Allison Moon, founder of Allison Moon Professional Organizing, with a 20-year background as a mental health occupational therapist. A love for small business and a passion for transforming lives, Allison finds a perfect fit in her work as a professional organizer. And this is so important in our lives. Allison provides both in-home and virtual professional organizing services in residential and business settings. Allison resides in Hamilton with her husband of 15 years, 3 children, and her sheepadoodle fur baby. Her happiest days are spent playing tennis, running, enjoying nature, and living with intention. Welcome, Allison. And Shannon Tymosko is an ambassador for KickAss Careers and is a second-year electrical apprentice with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 105, located here in Hamilton. A decade ago, she graduated as a child and youth worker. This experience helped give her a passion for people, growth, and change, and she is proud to say she is an advocate for mental health. As a KickAss ambassador and advocate for the skilled trades, she believes it's important to love what you do. The skilled trades are an unrepresented and misunderstood career choice, yet it provides that ability for someone to thrive, not just survive. Well, thank you to all of our amazing panelists for being here, sharing your expertise and your time. So what we're going to do now is we've got some amazing questions to ask. So I'll throw out a question and we'll allow the conversation to roll from there. So one of the big questions right now on our minds after we've been doing this for some, 11 months, and also a lot in the news these days is how has remote learning and work impacted health and well-being? And I know that's a big question. So whoever wants to start off the conversation, let's get it going.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll kick it off.
Thanks, Manvi.
Yeah, no worries. It's an interesting question, particularly for me. I might be taking it into a bit of a niche, but so I have ADHD. I tell everybody I have ADHD because I like putting a face on it that doesn't look like a hyperactive male, like of 8 years old. And it's great, but it's also, it's definitely had an interesting shift because of the remote learning environment and going offline. And I'm finding a lot of my fellow neurodivergent people. So my best friend has, 3 of my best friends have OCD. I don't know how we all find each other, but we do. And so it's great because I guess there is that uniform experience, and it honestly has been extremely challenging. And I think one of the interesting components too is complaining about it feels very privileged, to be able to even just be like, oh, well, I'm sitting at home and I hate sitting at home. For somebody like me, I'm like I am technically in my head bouncing off the walls. So it is an interesting experience. It's been quite a year, and there's been so much therapy, coping mechanism, medication changes. That's totally fine. That's so normal. We have to shift with the world around us. So I guess I don't know that I have like a perfect answer for this, but I just think the question was one that I have had so many conversations about, and I think it's just normal to be doing things to make it through the situation, and that's okay. It's contextualized to the situation, and nothing is normal. I think for a long time we were holding on to some sense of normalcy, but if I've kind of learned anything, is that I'm learning a new coping mechanism or a new trick every day. Something comes along, and seeking support is really, really important to be able to make it through. But I also find that sorry, the last thing that I'll kind of jump in there is it's different for everybody, and I think that's also part of it. People keep saying like, oh, just put things on do not disturb. Like, that does not work for me. I have ADHD. That's not that's like beyond my mind to explain how that's never going to work for me. So I think also taking the time to figure out what you need, almost to kind of go off the earlier thing with mindfulness, just taking the time to even just sit back and being like, what do I need right now? That's okay. You know, that is a form of mindfulness, taking a breath and being like, what can I do to get what I need to do done? Or if I can take a break right now, what can I do to make myself like recuperate so that when I get back to work or when I get back to that Zoom call, I can actually focus. So sometimes that involves like, I need to go eat. I'm just gonna go eat and only eat. So these are just some things that, you know, have come up in conversations recently, and particularly highlighting that it is different for different people's experiences, and we can't take a neurotypical view to adapting to this changing landscape, basically. But
yeah, very well put. And I think that's the big one. We're all different, and how we're coping with this is different, and we all need to understand that, and we need to make ourselves important in all of this. Anyone else want to add it into this particular question, or just add on to the conversation of what Manvi said there?
I'll touch a little bit on it. Considering I'm Shannon, I work as an electrical apprentice, and I work in a very male-dominated site right now. And so something that I've really realized, because I don't necessarily work remotely, I haven't experienced that sudden change of difference. But what I have experienced is lack of estrogen in my life. So I used to, participate in things like Zumba, where I would, make efforts to go see, women, or, our dodgeball, where I'd see friends. Here I'd have moments of hugs, which, talk about mental health. For social beings, we're supposed to have human touch. I work on a site with men. I spend all day not touching. So for me, it's, remote. I'm not really working remotely, but going to work, losing the other things has really affected my life.
Yeah, great point there. I mean, there's so many elements to take a look at, because not everyone is working from home, right? That's this question. We're going to talk a little bit more about the frontline workers. Shannon, you'll be able to talk more specifically to that later on. Allison, Mona, anything you want to add to this particular question? There's lots on the plate, so if not, we can move on to the next one.
Just a quick point. I think, mental health has been sort of given more attention in recent years, I think, which is amazing. But I think it's no longer remotely optional during COVID days to not look after our mental health. As the others alluded to, this is affecting everyone in some way or another, regardless of what your life is like, whether it in some ways feels less stressful or more. The uncertainty and the unsettledness of life right now is having an impact on everyone. And it can be a very personal journey, because the way each of us responds to that stress and that feeling of being unsettled can be very, very different. So I think just to emphasize, and it's wonderful that you're all here today, because it shows that you're putting this first. And I think we can't afford to not do the things to really prop up our mental health and really make it a priority to get through this.
I agree that there seems to be a lot of variation between individuals as to how remote learning has affected people or what their circumstances are. But there are also some trends that I've noticed in working with students around factors influencing their mental health and well-being. So for some students, we're hearing that their well-being tends to be decreased because of the number of distractions they now have around them. They might be surrounded by things like a pile of stuff they were thinking about doing that now is getting in the way of them actually studying, or they might spend hours just going through social media and they can't seem to stop. And some students describe the fridge as being a really large distraction from getting other things done. And another trend that I tend to see around decreasing well-being currently is the lack of connection. Many students would get that connection from a college community. They would engage with other students on campus or even through work, maybe which also was on campus for them. And with that lack of community, there are more individuals feeling an increase of loneliness and isolation. And there's one last factor, which seems to either increase people's well-being or decrease, and that kind of depends heavily on your personal situation. But spending more time with family is either having an increase in your well-being or a large and dramatic decrease to your well-being. And so that's one factor, or, depending on your family dynamics, that seems to be having a large impact on people right now.
Thanks, Mona. I think, yeah, there again, just taking a look at every situation's different, and you know, you don't know what someone else is experiencing. So what might work for you may not work for somebody else. And we need to be very open to understanding that and the impact of being isolated and what that means to students and their environments. So what supports can we talk about? I think this is a really important. I hear a lot in the news that they're saying that people are aware of their mental health and they are wanting to do something about it. But when you're in a remote environment, what support is out there to help us through the mental health and well-being that we need? You're still up, Mona. How about we start with you on this one? Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. I actually have a PowerPoint that I wanted to share. So I'm going to try to share my screen because I've tried to compile a list of counseling resources that are available for people. So let me see if I can pull it up.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. So for those of you, get a pen or paper. Oh, I guess just take a photo. That's always the easiest, isn't it? The quickest. So thanks for this.
No problem. You can see my screen. Is that right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So there are about 9 counseling resources, and these are predominantly targeted towards students, but they are all free. So that's kind of important to know that finances would not be a barrier for these services. So Mohawk College still continues to offer counseling services, and we have moved to an online, so either Zoom or phone counseling supports. Good to Talk, which is a counseling phone line available to all post-secondary students in Ontario, is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Keep Me Safe is a counseling phone and chat service, which is available to our international students. And this service provides counseling in various different languages. And there's also a chat function that students can use with the app. Okay, so there are a couple more. So for anyone below the age of 18, there is the Kids Help phone line, which offers both phone and chat counseling supports. For anyone in the LGBTQ community, there is a peer support line, which is actually Hamilton based, where you can access support from a peer 24 hours a day. And then there's Catholic Family Services, which have phone counseling and online supports. There is the Aboriginal Health Center in Hamilton, which offers both health and mental health supports. And there is the Black Youth Helpline, which provides supports to Black students requiring it. So we'll make sure that that goes out to everyone who was attending today.
Fantastic, thank you. Anyone else want to add some insight into, you know, the supports that are there, even just some perspective on what we can be doing to help our mental well-being while we work through the next, you know, several months of this still ahead of us?
Yeah, I'm happy to comment a little bit more as well. I have so many. I don't know if I should compile a list as well, but I think some that, especially for young people, I can kind of maybe speak to that experience more directly, being in post-secondary education myself, doing my graduate degree right now. honestly, yeah, it is I think the social isolation is kind of the worst part. I think that's something that everybody's feeling it to some degree, but especially young adults that are single. I mean, we can't understate or overstate actually that, because people in graduate school, we either live with one roommate, two roommate, we don't live within a full house. Even undergraduate students living in full houses, half the people moved home, so you don't have, if you're not somebody who is married or has a partner, you are kind of feeling a little lonely right now. And it's been a year of that. And beyond that, even on like a friend level, it's very sparse. I think that finding opportunities and like really finding safe ways, like going for a walk or just the distanced visit, a porch visit, the amount of endorphins that you get, I don't know what's going to happen when the world goes back to normal, because I'm going to be overwhelmed with the social interactions. So I would definitely say one for anybody, but particularly for young adults. We don't realize it sometimes, but we really crave social interaction with others, and even a Zoom call, of course, it's great, but sometimes it's worth the effort to arrange something if you're able to and if it's safe to do so. And then I really wanted to highlight one, taking an intersectional perspective. I know that was mentioned before. I just think that a lot of the time in the mental health, even with therapists, like I seek therapy, but I still see that it's a very colonized structure. It's institutionalized. It solves a problem that sometimes it isn't the real problem. The real problem sometimes is, due to systemic oppression. Like if you are facing experiences or you are going through life and there's situations that are making life harder for you, that are out of your control, that is something that I think a lot of people don't address. And that's not something that's commonly touched upon in the mental health area, particularly for women. So some supports. One thing that's really been great is I'm a reader. I know some people don't like to read. I have been getting into memoirs, but I've been trying to curate the voice. Like I don't want to read white women. I'm done with that. I've listened to white women and white men through my whole institutional academic career. And of course, the opinions and experiences are valid. It's just I already know them. That's the default setting in what is currently Canada and the society that we have, and the approach that many people take to mental health too. So it's been great, reading articles. If you don't like books, read an article by Dr. Jennifer Mullins. She does decolonizing therapy. It is so refreshing to center community care over self-care sometimes. I think that's really important too. How many bubble baths can you take before you realize that your supervisor was discriminatory towards you and that's why you're upset and anxious? Like there are reasons beyond just things within your control. We live in a society and we aren't responsible for everybody, but we do experience things as a result of these interactions. And so sometimes we have to remember that community care can also be therapeutic for us, but also help us move towards a collective liberation. Sorry, this was jargon heavy. I can break it down. But so Dr. Jennifer Mullins is a great resource, like on Instagram, decolonizing therapy on the internet. You can also read like books. I have one that I'm reading. I have a quote that maybe later, if there happens to be a prompt, I'd love to read it. But this one is one that I'm reading right now. I always have a stack of books next to me. I really like memoirs because I love learning from people. I think that we depend a lot as a scientist. I love science, but we depend a lot on institutional academia for validation. And there's a lot of validation from community, lived experiences, communities. So centering memoirs has been great. You can kind of get out of your own head into somebody else's head. And sometimes it's like having a friend in some ways when you're unable to see other people. Even if you have family around you who maybe doesn't have the same experiences as you can kind of find some resources there. So I would really say tapping into like resources like that is really helpful, and they're very accessible to people. Just being able to find community support in some way online.
And just to add a little bit extra there, because what I found really useful, because sometimes it's hard to find resources. So I find using YouTube and these different things to find activities that you once used to do outside of your house, so that you can almost bring that, the people into your home. You don't quite feel alone, when there's somebody there on the screen. And so sometimes we have to be kind of self-aware of what does make us feel better. And sometimes, we have to force ourselves to do those things that are uncomfortable, going for the walks. We can make phone calls and do all those things. But sometimes we have to remind ourselves this is what's healthy for me. I know I don't want to do it, but it's the best for it. And do those things and kind of, lean on your supports too, right?
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
just to add
Yeah.
to, I find, I'm sure many of you have experienced this too, but so many people are just getting outside more, and nature is such a great healer. And I found that to be personally, and many of my friends, that's been huge. Just trying new hiking trails, drive. I mean, a drive is now an activity, right? So drive an hour away and try a different conservation area, and always with a friend, that's something you can do safely to address that social isolation. So I've just heard generally that seems to be really impacting people in a positive way. It certainly has for me as well.
Yeah, nature's been a saver, that's for sure. The number of people you see out on the trails now, and taking up things like disc golf. A lot of young people are taking up disc golf because a lot of the conservation areas offer facilities for that. And I've seen so many young people out just enjoying themselves, and that's got to be good. Finding ways that you can connect and sort of get out of the stuck, the feeling that you're feeling that you're stuck in your environment. Allison, since you're still up, I want to talk to you about the workspace at home. I'm looking at your backdrop and I'm already feeling more relaxed, the colors you've chosen and all that kind of thing. So let's talk about that, because this isn't always an easy thing for people to accomplish. And I sometimes think we forget the importance of our environment in our mental well-being.
Absolutely. It's such a vital part of our well-being, what we're surrounded by. And this is my daughter's room, actually. I find it very peaceful. Yeah, absolutely. It's a challenge right now, obviously being at home. Often we're sharing the space with others. So, and certainly as students, you might have roommates, or you might be home with family, or perhaps you're on your own. But space can be difficult to carve out. But it's incredibly important, I think, because so much time is spent there. We really need to bring some definition to our homes and our workspace. So what I really recommend is find, and it might just be a corner, but create a designated space where you do your work, where you do your learning. And your coursework, that kind of thing. And it can be, I mean, if you have the luxury of having a spare room, that's great. That's an obvious place. Sometimes it's on the kitchen table. Sometimes it's a corner in your bedroom. I think the key, though, is making it a designated space, and there and only there is where you do that work. You want to keep it minimum. So if you're able to have a desk or even just a temporary, laptop tray that you put up when you're working or when you're online, but keeping what's around you very minimal, keeping it, you don't want the clutter. You don't want to be reminded of the rest of your house or apartment. You want to be really dialed into your learning. I really think it's important to have it's a great time to declutter, because it's hard. I mean, I know I'm working from home, and I'm not a student, but I know the challenge of trying to do more than one thing at home. And there's nothing but distractions. I mean, the fridge, like Mona mentioned, and the dog barking and the people and the children, and there's a lot to distract us. So if you can carve out a little area that you love, like put a nice vase on the desk or a plant, try to make sure you're near natural light. That's really important. Because we're not outside as much, probably, in some ways too. So make sure, if you can get near natural light, make sure you have some good task light as well, so you're not, your eyes aren't straining to read the screen or a book. I think even just in terms of, I don't know if I mentioned, but something inspirational. So whether it's a beautiful picture or even a beautiful saying that you can put on the wall right behind you. So just create this beautiful little cocoon for yourself, where this is where this happens. And in addition to that, just thinking about the structure of your day. When we've got one environment to do everything, it's easy just to like, oh, well, I'll just go for my walk now, and then I'll study for a bit, and then I'll watch YouTube videos for a bit. Instead, really, I think now more than ever, it's important to have a pretty structured day, so that you're actually being intentional with your routine. So you're getting up roughly at the same time, making your meals at the same time, and then in your calendar, it says between 9 and 10, I am working on this subject. And then between 10 and 10:30, I'm going for a run, or I'm going to connect with someone on Zoom. So just being really, really intentional about that. And of course, you know, we've all heard, turn off the notifications and whatever, just so you can really maximize your time, because it's a drag when it just gets, you know, it just gets spread out over the whole day because you didn't just give it the attention it needed. But just another thing I wanted to, just in terms of space, it's not only sort of what's around us, but it's also our comfort while we're sitting doing our work, right? And this is my OT hat I'm putting on for a minute, because the ergonomics are so important, right? If you're sitting for hours every day and you're not comfortable, or it's more strain on your lower back, it really affects your productivity. And of course, it's not good for your health. So really take a look at the chair you're sitting on. Are you just sitting on a kitchen chair, a stool? It might not have the support you need. You really need that lumbar support. You want to make sure your knees and your hips are at 90 degrees and you're sitting up at a surface that gives you, that you can look straight ahead to your monitor as well. So just give some thought to that, because it can really make the difference between comfort and discomfort. I find when I'm sitting for long periods of time at a desk, I put a little stool underneath my desk and I put my feet up, and it just takes the strain off the lower back. But those are just a few tips I can think of off the top of my head that I think are really important. But it's really about designating that space, making it beautiful, making it inspiring, and then just let it be about learning and only learning.
Yeah, that's a great tip, as well as the structure to the day, as I think that's one that a lot of people have moved away from, because there is so much flexibility. So like, this is great, like I'll do this here and this there, but you know, every day is just a bit of a mix. And then you kind of can get off track and not be as focused. And I, you know, again, there's lots of research to talk about how important it is to have that structure and to have, you know, regular routines in our lives and to not have clutter, because again, that increases our stress levels. Does anyone else have anything, you know, sort of to add about that environment component of what we're dealing with when it comes to our mental well-being? And if not, no worries. We've got lots of other questions to move on to. Mona?
I just wanted to share, sometimes I have like a little internal dialogue with myself. Like I make my coffee in the morning and I'm like, okay, Mona, you're going to work now, you know, and I kind of just have to like orient my mind to what I'm about to do. Or lunch break happens and I'm like, okay, Mona, now's your time to put on those shoes and try to go for a walk. So I think there's also a way we orient our minds to our space. And for me, it's really just saying it out loud, what I'm about to do.
And for me, I'm a checklist person. So if I don't make that checklist, I'll just forget about it. It just won't happen. And so, you know, it's mindset. It's about putting it down on paper and committing to it, and having some sort of system for yourself. Yeah.
Some great advice there. And it is such a challenge, you know, even not really getting dressed anymore for work for some people, or for school, for your day, whatever it happens to be. You know, we're very casual and we kind of sleep and eat and do everything in the same kind of clothes. You're not breaking up your day as well. It's like, what do they all say now? It's a consistent Groundhog Day, right? We all feel like we're living Groundhog Day. So, and it is true. Let's talk a little bit about resources, and, you know, what resources you can use to help overcome the new challenges caused by remote environment. And we touched a little bit about this, but let's delve in a little more. And just, you know, Manvi, you mentioned even reading. You know, I love that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, a book about meditation or mental well-being, but just to have that escape. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Anyone can lead the conversation there.
I'll just jump in since you tagged me in. Yeah, I think I would say resources. Okay. I would say, yeah, like the books are amazing. Definitely, I think I use books, TV, I play guitar, I do activities. It's like almost like for escapism, you know, I think that's really important because we really can't escape. I mean, if you're privileged enough to be able to work from home and you don't actually have to leave, the least we can do is keep ourselves busy with productive things and take care of ourselves, because of course we are valuable members of society and we need to make it through this. But also just in general, like in a non-capitalist sense, like work aside, take care of yourself for fun, you know, because you're a living human being and you deserve to read a good book and watch a good TV show. So of course those are good resources. Additional like resources, I think For me particularly, therapy's been great. I know that's not always accessible, but Mona highlighted resources available at Mohawk, which is amazing. I would totally encourage anyone. It doesn't matter whether you're a student, staff, or faculty. I have people that I'm close with that are staff and faculty. They also do it. Community members, I think it's really important. Friends that are not diagnosed with anything. I wasn't diagnosed until 2 years ago formally. So before then, I was just like, I don't know what it is. And still really, really good for me. And yeah, and I think I would say one more for me personally is I think everyone was talking about getting up and like routine. That's very difficult with ADHD, with depression, with anxiety. The motivation is very low. Medication is a great support for me. Obviously talk to your doctor, figure it out, but there should really be no stigma against that. Sometimes you just need a support to get into the routine. And once you're into the routine, maybe you won't need it anymore. And I've definitely had that happen in the past. Haven't always needed it, but definitely needed it. Switched, used to take a short acting version, if this kind of shows you how the pandemic has affected it, because I like being my normal spunky self when I can, but I also like be able to focus during lectures and stuff. And the pandemic, it was like October when I was just like, I give up. And I called my doctor and I said, we got to go back to the full day thing, because there's no day anymore. The day is the medication helps me get through the day, because before it would be like you have a lunch, like your friends are eating, so you're eating, or, you have like a routine because the external world ran. And now it's just the world runs when you want to run. So as a person with a motivation issue, it's what ADHD is. It's just it's a lack of dopamine. So just take some dopamine, if the neurotypical people can go to work and you need to make it to work too, you just got to do it to fit into unfortunately, this is the way the world works, right? So if you got to go to work and you can't get up, I think that it's a valid option for those that are able to take it, would like to take it, would at least like to have a conversation about it. I think there should be like no stigma or shame, because I think that it can support and help you when you need it. And I think that that's totally great. If it can help you feel better, I think that's the goal. So that is another resource. I would talk to your doctor about that, if that's something that because only you will know if you need to, like no one else is going to know what's going on in your head. So even with depression, I have friends on SSRIs, like I've been depressed. What is the threshold? Only I will know when it gets to a point where I need to, seek help, but actively doing that, it's a really good way to advocate for yourself. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for making it so real too. I think that's really helpful. Shannon?
For myself, when we talk about resources, I feel like because my life hasn't really changed much, I'm still going to work. One of the resources, and I'm new to the skilled trades. I entered into skilled trades kind of at the beginning of COVID, so I was kind of, robbed a lot of those, mingling or, meeting people opportunities that you might have, starting a new career because you're so isolated. So for me, I really started using online resources and like groups of organizations. So there's tons of like women in the skilled trades groups, organizations like KickAss Careers, where they're groups of people, like-minded people who, want the same kind of things and have the same passions as you. Getting connected with those people makes it a lot easier for you to maintain, your own passion and your own drive. So I found a lot of different groups and stuff on Facebook. I think because of COVID-19, a lot of people are now starting to move to these social media places to connect. And so, skilled trade workers are all over Instagram sharing about, their daily work and how proud they are and their different passions. And, it's because of these kind of communities that I've been able to meet people. And it's kind of kept me going because, I started now engaging in skilled trade workers. We got hard hats most days, and we have stickers on them. So I made my own little sticker. I started sticker swapping. I've never met these people, but somehow I'm connected. I'm sending stickers to, Europe. It's made me connected to people that I never thought that I could. And it's partially because of COVID-19, because it's forcing you to look for those human connections and so look for those kind of groups because they're out there, whatever your kind of niche might be. For me, skilled trades, that's what excites me right now. So.
Anyone else to talk about resources there? I think sometimes it's really hard for us just to take that first step, right? Like to actually go, okay, that I need this and I need to reach out and I need to look for something where I can connect with people who might be going through the same thing or can identify with what I'm going through. So any advice there?
I think I think as quickly as you can reach out to those around you, the people that know you, that maybe even acquaintances, and you don't have to share your whole story or your struggles, but just seeking additional ideas for resources, because a lot of people are in a similar kind of situation or might know somebody who's had similar struggles to you. So sometimes it's taking that first step, and it can be really hard, but taking that first step and saying, I'm kind of struggling, I really need more support with this. And you might be surprised with some of the people around you who might actually have some knowledge or some way they can direct you in a helpful way. Yeah, so I think that's a really important step. It's a tough one, I know, but it is really important.
I also have a quick add to that. If you happen to be somebody with any sort of suspected or diagnosed, like whether it's anxiety or a tangible mental health issue that, or just a mental health experience, you can join like Facebook groups, you can go on Reddit. I think people don't validate that very much, but just reading other people's experiences, it is like so freeing, because then you realize like, oh, you're not just doing this to yourself, or there's no this is like a real issue that maybe it'll be the push that you need to maybe go seek help, because sometimes you doubt like if this is serious enough. I've had situations where I've even had counselors tell me when I used to go in undergrad, oh, like if you're not in a more serious situation, you shouldn't be using this resource, which was a terrible thing for a counselor to say. But there is no minimum threshold, and if you are teeter-tottering, like I would really encourage you to just go Google it, do some research, read some Reddit threads, read some Facebook. It's not evidence, it's not going to diagnose you, but just hearing, and if you feel like, oh, I'm having a lot of experiences that other people are having, and maybe they went to help them, maybe that'll be the push that you need. I just think sometimes it's hard to talk to people around you who all seem normal or are having a great time, and you're like, why am I the only one that's like having such a hard time, but if you really have that communication barrier, or you're just an introvert who doesn't, like me, blurt everything that they think, you can try to read and find those resources or join those Facebook groups and just watch and read. You don't have to actively participate. So
just to add on that, I think right now we're in a very mental health friendly place. Everybody on here, is here to talk about mental health and how important it is to our well-being. We're all fairly educated on the basics of mental health, but there is a huge population of people who are not, and they're struggling. And I think it's so important for us, maybe educated people or people who are a little bit more, we all have good days, bad days. When it's your good day, you need to check on maybe somebody who's having a bad day. Knock on your friends' doors if you haven't heard from them, because you never really know what's going on in a person's brain, and like we have said, like we need to take care of our people, and so knock on doors, reach out to your friends, and don't be afraid to lend a hand, because we're all a little bit struggling right now.
I really appreciate what the rest of you shared around like the community as being a resource, like the online community, our friends, and just like reaching out for peer support. I think is a very essential part of normalizing some of the challenges that we face as human beings, whether we have a diagnosis or not. And I wanted to just share an additional resource that actually just comes in the form of a strategy. I think we often have a lot of thoughts, and some of our thoughts can be kind of disturbing or distressing to us, but we don't often feel comfortable sharing them with other people. It's kind of like we feel like they have to be private because we're ashamed of them. And so I wanted to just maybe talk a little bit about what it is that we say to ourselves is really important. And when we try to understand a problem, that helps us solve the problem. So I think it's important for us to learn to separate us from the problem that we're having. And it's important to kind of say, I'm having a problem, as opposed to I am the problem that I'm having. And when you can kind of see that you're not the problem, you're having a problem, you can make some progress in changing that. And I think there's a relationship between what we think, how we feel, and how we act. And when you have thoughts like, I never do anything right, or I always make mistakes, I can't succeed, or people will eventually find out that I don't even know what I'm really doing in life. All of these thoughts make it really difficult to feel good at all, which makes it really difficult to find motivation to act or energy to even just do some of the basic things in life, like showering and eating. And so cognitive behavior therapy gives us a method for examining, analyzing, and altering our thoughts. And I just wanted to share in kind of a few more sentences how this works. So one strategy in cognitive behavior therapy is that you take your thought into a courtroom. And in this courtroom, there are 3 people. There are 2 lawyers and 1 judge. The one lawyer is looking for evidence to support your thought, like to support a thought like, I never do anything right. And the other lawyer is looking for evidence that proves that that thought is false. And this is often the step where you want to pull in your supports. Ask your best friend, like, how is it false that I never do anything right? Or do you have any evidence that that would prove that actually sometimes I do things right? Can you help me remember those times? And when you look at all the evidence that supports the thought, I never do anything right, and all the evidence that goes against it, the judge then examines all of that evidence and tries to come up with an alternative thought. And maybe that alternative thought includes some of the more positive or kind of important things that you've done, which helps you see that a thought like I never do anything right maybe isn't entirely true. It's just one strategy I wanted to share.
Thanks, Mona. It's very powerful to talk about our self-talk, right? And that can be our worst enemy, the things that we think and feel about ourselves. So really important first step, I think, for a lot of people to take a look at that. Shannon, I want to talk to you about being an essential worker in the sense that, as you said, you're going to work every day. And I think that students are experiencing this as well. If they need to support themselves, they're in jobs, maybe they're working in a grocery store. So they've been working through all of this, and that's got to have its toll as well, because you're out there. Can you give us your perspective on what that's been like?
So for me, being an essential worker, I did have a 7-week with everybody else back in March. I did take some time off, and so I have felt the the sitting at home, and it's not a fun experience. And so I am very grateful to be still working. I think something that, we haven't really talked about here when it comes to mental health, and it's one of the biggest reasons that I joined the skilled trades is, myself, I'm someone who struggles with depression. I think we all right now are probably struggling heavily with some seasonal depression. And when you go to the doctor, the first thing a good doctor is going to ask you is, do you exercise? And normally, prior to my switch to the skilled trades, my answer was no, because I sat behind a desk for 40 hours, and then I got home and there's a list of things I have to do, and I didn't like exercising. But getting paid to work does not feel like exercise. And so every day I go to work, it's for my mental health. I'm going up those stairs, I'm climbing ladders for me to keep me healthy. And so I am so grateful to still have a job, and physically active job, because when I'm having, the opposite end, we've talked a little bit about the single life, the single life, not just a single life, but living alone. So I don't have roommates, I don't have a pet, I don't have a fish, I don't have a bird to talk to. It gets really, really lonely here on the weekends. And so, there's that other side of it. And so I'm so grateful for the physical aspect and still being able to socialize with the guys on site. It is a lot of testosterone. So like I talked about earlier, I am definitely missing some of my, things that I used to do prior to the dodgeball and my Zumba. These things kind of gave me a bit more balance, so now I've kind of moved those things to online. It's not the same going on my TV and seeing my girls, but it's close, and so I talk about, when we get back together again, and we talked about the dopamines that, we'll feel. It'll be like, Christmas morning. And so essential worker, it's been beneficial for me to still be working. For all those people who are still working but have a desk job, I feel for you, because that just, your scenery is never changing. It's got to be tough. And so I loved what Allison said about, making a little bit of a work nook. I was jotting down ideas that you guys have been saying about my own little mental health, and actually scheduling time in, because I'm, struggling on weekends to do anything because I don't want to. So all of these little tips and tricks, you got to pick what's best for you, apply it. Try, it's hard to know what works best, but try different things. It's what I say about the skilled trades. Unless you try it, you won't know, but this meditation at the beginning of this, this whatever Zoom thing was so nice. I felt so much, because I was really nervous about today. I actually brought my, nerves down a bit, and, so use the resources. You have to practice. If you don't practice, it's not going to feel normal until you try it 2, 3, 4 times. So don't give up, on the first time if you don't feel like it's for you. Try it again. The second time you might have a little bit more confidence. But yeah, my mental health, I'm dealing with a lot of boys, and so I'm ready to get back to my normal world where I get some exposure to everybody.
So we need more women in technology and trades, right, Shannon? We want to see more women doing those jobs. Thank you for that. And I love the fact that you brought up the physical side of things and how important it is for us to be doing something physically, even though it's really hard. Like you're like, I don't want to go for a walk, I'm tired. I don't want to find time in my day, but it's so important. There's so much research behind how that will change and how it helps your mental well-being. So does anyone else have perspective on that side of things, the physical side of things? Because I just think that, trying to help us all find the motivation to get physical, whether it's yoga, which, I love it, or a walk or whatever it happens to be. So anybody's comment?
I'll just say I have a terrible time with exercise. I suck at it. I never do it. I still don't do it. Today I went for the first walk. I think I literally left my house for the first time today in 5 days, what feels like, at least, other than to go grab like maybe delivery or my package or something from my porch. But I can firmly say that it was so nice to be outside. So I just think that like doing it more. I hate that I'm saying this because I'm like the anti, like I love the concept of exercise. Actually doing it really sucks though. But I think that like once you do it, you have to remember how good it feels and then do it again and then like just get into a roll. At least that's what I'm going to try to do going forward. That's something that I discovered today, like rediscovered today, because I went for this crazy 5-kilometer walk. I was so winded. I honestly was a little concerned for my cardiovascular health, but moral of the story, it was a great experience. And so I think you forget if you get out of the rhythm of it. And that's how I personally been feeling. So don't shame yourself for that. I don't think I've exercised at all this pandemic. But I went on a longer walk than normal today, and I don't go on many walks, and it was great. And I'm just trying to like hold on to those endorphins and that feeling so that I can remember that like, oh, you know what, I'm going to make some time today, because I actually loved how that felt. And one thing that I find too is like, I really like podcasts. I don't know. I just love staying engaged. So if it's fun for you to make a playlist, it's really fun for me to like take an hour and just be like, I really want to pick the best songs ever. And then you get to listen to them. It's like a little treat. So I think incentivizing exercise too. For me, my stairs, like ordering like packages has been a great way to do the stairs in my house. So, I mean, just finding a way to get yourself to do it. Sometimes you have to trick yourself into it, but yeah, I think it's good for you for sure. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I think, you expressed it well, because it's not an easy routine to get into, for sure, Manvi, right? But when you do it, it does feel so good. Put that feeling, however you felt after your walk today, on a piece of paper and stick it to a wall. You can read it tomorrow to motivate you to walk again. Anyone else have perspective on that? Because this is something that so many people struggle with, but we know that it's good for us. So why don't we do more of it, right? Because we know the result is good. So any perspective, and if not, we can move on to the next question.
I just think from personal experience, it's something you have to try in multiple kinds of ways. Like when people say do yoga, I just get mad because I think it really doesn't work for me. And I feel the opposite of relaxed when I do it. But then when I started kickboxing, I feel like I'm just so happy, so joyful. I love it. I love it so much. So I think you got to just keep trying different forms of exercise until you find one that feels good for you. And even if something feels fantastic for someone else, it might feel terrible for you, and that's totally okay.
And just
sorry, I was going to jump in and just give my 2 cents if that's okay too as well.
Absolutely, Jay.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I echo those comments with the exercise. I actually used to be a personal trainer when I was in university, and somehow along the line in banking, I lost that skill because it's so comfortable to get into the norm. But what I found that actually helps too as well, and a lot of people have spoken about this during our mental health, is nutrition. So the nutrition also plays a huge part in that exercise. I have a sweet tooth, and I know that the sweet tooth impacts my, I would say endurance, right? Because sugar is a very high rush, and then it brings you really down low. So I would also recommend for all of us on the call here, like, just think about that nutrition, because that also helps build that energy that you need to go and get engaged to do the exercise. That's something that many people sometimes overlook, because they think exercise is the big thing. It is, but you have to have the right fuel in the car to make it run. So.
Oh, I love that. Good fuel in the car to make it run. Shannon?
And I love that you touched on nutrition, because like, for me, as a woman, mental health and nutrition, it's like, I'm happy, I want to eat. I'm not like, my moods can change whether or not I'm hungry, to be honest. But one of the things that I love about the skilled trades, and I compare to my previous jobs, is at my work, I get structured breaks. There's no sitting at your desk and eating for 45 minutes. It's like you get 15 minutes and you're going to take advantage of that 15 minutes. And so I actually make like planned meals. It's like, okay, I got to have lunch because I'm working. I'm using that energy. And by lunchtime, my stomach's gurgling. It's like, you need food, Shannon, you need food. And I realized this so much when weekends hit, because then weekends hit, I wake up, I like do nothing all day, and then I'm not hungry. And so, it's so important to keep moving, because it also stimulates, appetite, hunger. And for, people like myself who like mental health can play on your digestion. Make sure, you're eating those meals, because, it feeds your brain. It's so important. Sometimes you're not hungry and you don't eat, but then you decide to eat chips that day. It's like, that's not probably the best thing you could have picked today. So nutrition is so important, along with exercise. And it's one of those things that can very quickly go out the window. We make commitments for New Year's, and then 3 weeks in, all goes away. So
yeah, and just to hop onto that, I think emphasizing again the importance of structure for all of these things, for the nutrition, for the exercise, for the socializing, for the getting outside, for the learning component. It's the more intentional you can be about how you plan and structure your day. It's kind of like, it's hard if you don't have any plan for the day. You're just floating along, relying on your own level of motivation from day to day, which, if you're anything like me, I could just sit and watch Netflix all day if I didn't have a moment of inspiration or motivation. And I think that's what can really get lost at a time like this. We don't know when this is going to change, right? So we're sort of like, I don't know, I guess I'll hang out here and do nothing for a while. But by putting a structure into a place, it's basically putting an external sort of framework. So if we build that with some intention, then it kind of helps just sort of feel like working or feel like going for a walk. Oh, it's 12 o'clock. This is when I go for a walk, because in a moment of like intention and good health, we decided that that's what our day would include. So it's sort of taking the motivation that we usually rely on to get us through the day and making it a little bit more external, but it's obviously still under your control. And the structure can change and be flexible, but at least have something that you can work with.
I just want to also piggyback off what Allison said, because I think that it's difficult when I have good days and bad days. I think Shannon mentioned that. When I'm having a good day, I get like prepackaged snack foods, or I'll get like things that I know that I'll need on a bad day, because that's being proactive. I think that like that external structure, I honestly think, oh, I won't need this meal replacement drink. But then I'm like depressed for a whole weekend. I'm not cooking. I'm not leaving my bed. So if that's the case, like I looked out for future me, because I think making space for our mental health in every aspect of our, like that's what fundamentally the practice is being intentional with your mental health, always being aware of it. Like all spaces are spaces that you should be aware of, what you're doing. I think that's a form of mindfulness too, but particularly like looking out for yourself, knowing yourself, building those skills. When I first, before I was diagnosed with ADHD, I thought it was like a panic disorder because I used to have panic attacks. And in those situations and before and after those situations, I was so anxious, like I couldn't eat. I would just, whenever I get anxious, I don't have an appetite. It's not for any reason other than I don't have an appetite. But my therapist would tell me like, just shove a smoothie down. And I honestly can do that. I can definitely plug my nose and shove a smoothie down. And then I start to actually feel a little bit better. So there's things that you got to do, like noticing those things about your patterns, your routines, trying different things. But then if something works, just prepare for the worst. Let's hope that we never have to depend on these things. But if I'm being completely truthful, I always depend on these things. Like there isn't a month where I don't at least have to depend on them at least once, whatever these things are. Like we're talking nutrition. So I'm talking, for me, my favorite chocolate, like meal, like protein shake thing that's like in my fridge. I always have some because I know like they're good for 6 months. Like I need to have my nutrients. And so that's one way to look out for yourself, because in the situations that I don't have them, I'm eating like a Nutella spoonful, or like I'm eating really random stuff. And that's also not going to help me move past the situation that I'm experiencing. So just a little bit of like proactiveness. Like people don't talk about it, but people that are taking care of their mental health are doing so actively, not just like reactively. So
yeah, I think that just kind of piggybacking off that, it's like the me now looking out for the future me. And if you can kind of think, actually, sometimes I have to take care of future me, you can set up some safeguards for those days where you just have no desire to do anything for yourself at all, that the past you took care of that a little bit.
Anything more on this particular topic? It's such a good one, and really good points. We don't think about nutrition and our physical activity and our environment always and attach that to our mental well-being. So really good points and conversation here. Allison?
I just wanted to say that I think all these things we're talking about, they're so important for healthy living and helping us through this time. But if you have a bad day, that's okay. Like there are going to be days where you just don't get it right. And let me tell you about one I had the other day. I started an exercise routine about 2 weeks ago. I used to be a runner and I've been a bit lazy. So I basically have signed up with Beachbody On Demand, and I have the laptop beside my bed and my running shoes and my weights. They're right beside my bed. So I had one day where it was a pretty open day. I didn't have a lot planned. It was pretty relaxed. Except that I knew that the first thing I was going to do when I got out of bed was exercise. Because if I go downstairs and do the thing, I'm never coming back up. Well, that morning I got out of bed at 11:45 because I didn't want to exercise. So I literally stayed in bed. That was what a waste of time, but I had to find some grace in it. Like it was just a day. It doesn't mean it's going to be the same tomorrow, or maybe it will, but maybe it'll get better the next day. And so just trying to find some humor and a little bit of grace with yourself, because it's a hard time and you've got to be your own best friend, and if you haven't learned to do that, it's a good time to dig into that a little bit and just give yourself some respect and some space to be human,
I just want to say I love what Allison said. I totally agree. Like self-empathy is the biggest, like at the end of the day, no one will know what you're experiencing better than you. So if you can be your own best friend through the process, like that's the best hand you could hold. No external support will ever truly understand the experience. So you just have to, build that amazing relationship with yourself. And so many bad days, but that's okay. As long as you start building the structures to get through them, I think that's like the end goal, is to just keep moving, and it'll always get easier as you build more coping skills. But I love everything Allison said. That was really well said.
I'll also, at this time, encourage anyone, if you've got a comment that you want to put in the chat, we can try to get that out to the panelists, or a question. No worries, obviously, if not, because we've covered such great content here, but sometimes it's just nice. This is a really comfortable space to ask those questions that you may have wanted to ask for a while. And we've got some really good perspective here. So I just wanted to let you know that, because it is already, it's 25 to 6. It's hard to believe that that the first hour and a half has just flown by. So thanks for making it just as great as it is, and as good of a conversation, because there's just pieces of this that people can take away with them. Even if it's one thing, right? I always say that if you can take one thing from a conversation that can lead you down a different path, or, you know, connect you to someone to help, or even just get you into that process, then it's been successful. So let's talk about those mini breaks, right? Like maybe we don't have a good hour to exercise, or even a half hour, but what can we do? Are any of you doing something that just takes a little bit of time each day that you can let people know about, so that they can maybe start and get them on the path to sort of that healthy well-being, even if it's just breathing for 5 minutes? Any perspective on that? I mean, Michelle brought it up a bit with the meditation, and just, you know, even if you can work 5 minutes of meditation into your day, but is anyone doing anything there?
I just wanted to say I love what Michelle said, because I'm one of those people who really always, I've got a busy mind. I always think meditation is going to be beneficial for me. And, you know, 5 minutes here proves that. And so taking away that like thought that it needs to be formal, that you need to like make an environment, you know, clear the space. It's really nice to think, you know, you can do it in a, you know, standing in line at the grocery store, or, you know, stop at a stoplight, those kind of things. It takes the pressure, and it's about, you know, focusing, I think, on just being present, which is so hard to do, I think, in a world full of stimulants everywhere, you know, phones and people, and it's very hectic. So I really love that. I don't necessarily have anything other to add, other than, you know, it's, you know, take those moments of break. You know, sometimes you need just to pause, walk away, take a few breaths. You know, I have friends that breed puppies. If you've got you know, pets at home, great form of therapy. Take a few minutes, go play with your dog, take them for a walk. You know, these kinds of things, just a break, a pause, some sort of change of scenery, to kind of, you know, get you through that little moment.
And if you don't have a pet, it's quite possible that one of your neighbors, somebody you know, does, and you could offer to take that dog for a walk, or babysit the cat for a couple of hours. Because I had somebody reach out to me recently asking to walk my dog. And I thought, yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes going for a walk is hard to do, but if you have a reason to do it, it's a lot more fun. There's nothing like pet therapy.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree. I foster puppies. It's really helped my mental health. I started. It's great because if you can't commit to a dog long term, like, or, you know, whatever, I'm a dog person. It's great. I get to hang out with puppies. They get adopted in like 2 weeks. They're so cute. And I just get to cuddle them. And then I get, like, you know, however long I want off, because it's super flexible. And then whenever I'm ready to take another one, and it's just another puppy for me. So I really recommend that. I was just gonna say, if pet therapy is one, I really recommend it. And I have a couple others. I would say one is, if you are like me, I can't meditate. Like, I try. Every time I try really hard, I will always give up. I just get really bored. My brain works fast, so it's just too fast. I'm sure there are people that can do it, and I have done it. I find it difficult on a daily practice basis. So I journal, because I find it easier to put my thoughts down instead of like putting them or noticing them. I know that's, I actually love Headspace. I do listen to it and I practice meditation, but I don't think that that's the thing that gets me through. That's what I do in crisis usually. So I find that journaling daily is a better habit for me, because I can actually process the thoughts. I ask myself dumb questions like, why am I actually mad? Or like, what was their intention? You know, and like, I'll talk to myself almost, like, so I'm trying to process the fast thoughts that I'm having. But that might be something unique to me. But one thing that I can say that's maybe more generalizable for whatever thoughts you're having outside of, you know, journaling, if you need help, I have a book. I always try to buy these. I actually use them a lot. This one's about like living a magical life, but they'll ask you prompts, and they give you like daily prompts, and it's great. Just like, what are you grateful for? Or like, how can you create more abundance in your life? And like, the wording is so cool, because then you think about it and you're like, that's such a good question. I can't just say like, I'm grateful for my dog, like, or, you know, like, how can I create more abundance? Like, I had to think about that. And I think the process of thinking about something in a very dedicated manner can bring you out of whatever life stress is happening, and you can just for a second think about yourself or whatever the question is asking you, and you don't have to do the work. They ask you the question and you almost feel like, I got to find out now. I got to know what the answer is for myself. So that is a good thing. And there are free resources online that can also have that. So journal prompts online are really helpful. Giving yourself like 15 minutes. You can set a timer if you prefer. Before bed, it's a good way to like clean out your brain, I find. Yeah, I had one more, but I'll think about it because I kind of forget now. But that's why I write everything down. But oh wait, I remember. Sorry. I love volunteering, as I've mentioned, fostering. I also have my 2 nonprofits, and I do other work as well. I mean, coming to things like this and just work with University of Waterloo, where I'm a graduate student. It's great. I think sometimes, like, if I also work, I'm a researcher. My work is honestly very taxing with its COVID-19 risk communication, if you could believe it. So it's like, are people following guidelines? It's like the most stressful thing. It's like the answer is, I don't know. And then like how to improve the risk communication. It's very difficult. So the day job and then my thesis, of course, climate change. So there's just a lot of stressful things during the day. You need to disengage. You can't just bring that to bed, right? And so a way that I do that is I volunteer and I'm doing fun things. My thesis is on climate change. So I volunteer. I founded a nonprofit on climate change. So I feel like I'm actually doing something and I'm with a community. I hop on a call with my team. I'm having so much fun. We're doing something. We feel productive, but like in a different way. So if you can find a different thing that kind of gives you that change, if you can't disengage and just meditate, I know that works for a lot of people. I love the concept. It does not work for me. So if that's the case, and same with yoga, same with these kinds of practices, so cool. But if you need to be engaged, if you're one of those people that's anxious thoughts need to stay engaged in a different thing, just find another thing that makes you happy, that you don't have stress associated with, and don't make that thing stressful. Like, that's a really important part of that, is don't get so involved that suddenly it is now the new stressor of your life. Like, set healthy boundaries within that space and make it so that it's fun. If you end up, I founded it, that's very stressful. But then I learned delegation is a thing that you can do, and so working on those skills is fun. And so just finding different creative outlets for your energy, I think that's really great. Not always spending it on other people or in like your work. Like, save some of that energy for yourself. That's some of the things that I would say that I do.
I have an idea. Here's a way to empower yourself when you're at home. So say you're home sort of studying or working away at your course for a long period of time. Set your timer for 10 minutes and tackle a pile of clutter. Honestly, so many of my clients that I work with, they do struggle with mood. And when we start working on space and getting a handle on what's around us, especially when we're faced with it every day, it really can do something to kind of make you feel like you're in control of something and you're empowered. And so it's especially start in the area where you're, the little work nook, start in that area, anything around you that might be acting as sort of visual clutter or visual sort of distraction, just tackle it. Or that pile of papers you've been meaning to go through and organize. You can get so much done in 10 focused minutes, honestly. Just set the timer, crank up the tunes, and just tackle it. And it's then addictive. You'll want to do that often. But that's a nice solution. And there's nothing but good things that come out of that.
And it's about,
sometimes you find money.
And I think that to add to that, it's about, don't look at the mountain, look at the little tiny little hill that you need to climb today. And it's just, it's just a pile of papers. Don't look at the entire table. The entire table might overwhelm you. Break it down. It's been a while since I was a child and youth worker, but I do still remember SMART goals. And, it's about being, measurable and attainable and all that kind of stuff, so that, you can feel empowered about it as well. And so don't feel overwhelmed. Just start small,
I think one thing that grounds me and kind of gives me the sense of calm is actually to dream really big. So I like to ask myself, like, what am I doing that's bigger than myself? Like, bigger than I made breakfast, I ate breakfast, I checked my emails, like the big kind of picture thing really helps me feel purposeful. And so I like to feel like my day involves more than just some of the things that I would consider mundane. So I like that kind of like something that makes me feel like I'm dreaming or hoping for a future.
It's really fun too to kind of take a look at some of the things that can take us away from our space. As you said, Allison, organizing, you know, they talk about coloring, that's just a distraction, journaling, like a real solid way to to be able to express yourself. Manvi, I'm so happy you brought that up. They talk about knitting, taking up guitar, like so many things that you can do. Really helpful if you've got a little bit of interest, but maybe you don't know what you're interested in until you try it. So I love that. And I do think that there's some sort of business opportunity here. Instead of car share, it's dog share. I love that. You know, I think that we can connect a bunch of people that way. And you know what, like animals give you unconditional love. And so just taking a few minutes with your animal, if you have one, or your neighbors, if you don't, is a great idea. So thanks for that. We are almost out of time. We're coming up at it's 1:45. I do want to ask about the life work, the life school, that balance, because I think this is why we've heard so much. And of course, Groundhog Day just happened, but everyone's saying they feel, for those who know the movie Groundhog Day, if you don't, you're living the same, you know, day over and over and over again. A lot of people are feeling that way because there isn't any separation. If you are in school at home, you're schooling, you live and you work, or you live and you school in the same space. Perspective on that. How can people find that balance and not feel like it's just there's no end to it?
For me, I find that because I am working, and then this kind of stuff that I do, it's extra. It's, you know, it takes up my evenings, and so it's really important for me. Not that I'm complaining, but it's really important for me at like 8 o'clock. It's time to turn off the phone. You know, pick a day of the week that's just for you. I think it's really important to schedule you time. You can't help anybody else if you're not, you know, in a good state of mind. And so I try to just structure time for myself.
Yeah, I would. I would just. Oh, sorry. I would just agree. I also think that some of the stuff that Allison mentioned with, you know, space, that's been important for me. I'm like, I have terrible habits with space. I feel like a lot of this is just me saying I have terrible habits, but I'm somehow making it there. No, but I mean, there's days where I work in my bed, which I know everybody says, don't do it. But sometimes when I'm like not having a great day, but I still need to get stuff done, I have to do that because that's just what I do. But most days that I'm able to, you know, be really functional and whatever, I definitely love the idea of moving spaces. I think that going through a doorway really helps. that like I have a desk in my room that I used to work on, and I have like a desktop, but I actually never use it anymore because I can't be in the same room almost, because my room just feels like a room where I go to relax. So if I'm taking a call, it'll be in my living room where we're right now, or my dining room or something, but it won't be in my bedroom anymore because first of all, the background's gonna be my bed, which is kind of like, you know, which is totally fine, but I just, you know, you got to make that work line separation. But actually, like for me, a physical doorway almost helps. I can close the door. And I think that was alluded to before, but I actually like the concept of that because I can't even think about it. It's like out of sight, out of mind. And I'm a napper. So unfortunately, the couch is still fair game, but the bed is out of the question, which is great because that nap goes on for like the whole evening. So at least with the couch, like the light eventually wakes you up. But yeah, I think the doorway really helps if that's something that you can do, or just like hide it somehow. I don't know what, I read a thing yesterday that was like, put a blanket over your desktop computer or something when you're done with it. And I didn't even think that was a bad idea. I was like, that makes sense. Like if it's out of sight, you're not thinking about it. If you're not thinking about it, you can't be stressed about it, you know? And you might laugh if you see the blanket, but it might be a good reminder, like, don't think about it, you know? So I think some sort of like physical divide is really helpful.
When we're often in these public spaces, they have like rules associated with them, right? Like the library is only open from 8 in the morning until 10 p.m. So that like kind of rule there kind of gives you an orientation to structure yourself. And I think one of the challenging things when we try to structure ourselves is that we kind of have to think of these rules that we create for ourselves. So I close my laptop at 5 p.m. and I'm like, work is closed for the day, Mona. It opens again at 8 o'clock in the morning. So you kind of gonna give yourself these rules, and don't be too hard if you don't follow them all the time. But I think structure involves some type of behavioral rules that you can kind of create for yourself.
Thank you. Those are a great way to sort of wrap up and end, right, is finding that separation and what you can do. Any closing comments that you want to make? Before you do that, however, we do have a comment from Susie, and I love this. It says, on the note of starting small, do something today that brings you closer to where you want to be tomorrow. Love that. So any closing comments for each of you, and then we're going to get wrapping up as we get close to 6 o'clock here.
I just wanted to add, in terms of the work-life balance, making sure that you have something to look forward to in your near future, because every day can feel the same. And sometimes we have to be really creative. I have a hike booked with a friend of mine next Thursday, and we're actually going snowshoeing. And it's not that exciting, but it's on my calendar and it's different from what's happening this week. So whatever it is, or if it's making a special meal or baking a cake, whatever it might be, just something that feels special and different from what you do every day, I think can go a long way. And then I always come back to this, I alluded to it earlier, and many of you have, just the importance of giving yourself some grace and digging into a life of being your own best friend to get through this, and to take each day as it comes. Thank you.
I was just going to say that what I would like to see is just, I love these kinds of conversations, you know, coming from a place of construction. Truth be told, it's not a very big conversation that takes place. Mental health, you know, I had a situation last week with my foreman, and I said to him, you know, what so-and-so said to me hurt my feelings. And he said, well, it would hurt my feelings too, but I just can't say it. Now, he can't say it because, you know, it's not the environment for him to share. He's just trained that way. You know, so talking about mental health, you know, even to people who maybe aren't necessarily participating in these conversations, but education is the, you know, first kind of start to, you know, acceptance and, you know, all that kind of nice warm fuzzy stuff. So I'm very grateful for these conversations. Keep them up. Eventually it will trickle down. You know, I think it does, you know, as more women kind of get into the workplace, that will also make a difference as well, because we're allowed to talk about feelings. And so our presence on the construction site actually allows men to open up, because he wouldn't have said that to one of his boys, you know, and so it actually gives them a little bit of liberty and freedom to be vulnerable. And I think it was James who talked about it, you know, that vulnerability, you know, with your you know, coworkers, it allows them to know it's okay to open up. And surprisingly, I probably know some of the deeper, darker secrets of the men, because they won't tell their friends, you know, when they're having a bad day. So thank you for doing these kind of conversations, and thank you for having me, and I appreciate all the work that you guys do.
Hi, Shannon, can you hear me? Oh,
yes. Hi.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to quickly echo on Shannon's comments there. You know what, as a male, like I said before, it was very difficult for me last year to open up, but after doing it, I don't know if I can shut back. Like, I'm very vulnerable now, and I speak my mind a lot more. And I think the messaging across the board is going to be just on my end too as well. Like, for our organization, I hope you guys don't mind. I'd love to share with the organization the conversation we had today, because I think it's important to bring awareness to it. The more we talk about it, the more people do feel comfortable in a safe environment to speak like that. So Shannon, thank you very much for providing feedback from your end, and everyone else too as well. But on behalf of RBC, I do want to say thank you very much. This is one of the reasons why we invest in Mohawk College, because all of you are in the future. And I was very privileged to be on that call today with hearing everyone's messaging. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James.
Yeah.
Mona, Manvi, any last minute comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just have a quote from a book. I've just been reading it, and it's just topical, and I live in the moment. So I'm just going to read very short thing. This is really, I think, something just, I think everyone has said such great things. I had to think something new. And this is something that I think again, I'll reemphasize that it is understated in spaces like this, that people's lived experiences are different. I always bring that intersectional lens. That's just who I am. So I'm reading a book by an Indigenous queer author. His name is Billy Ray Belcourt. It's a history of my brief body, and I really enjoy it because it's something that I don't have a perspective of being a queer Indigenous male. So I thought this was great, but something in it that I did resonate deeply with as a racialized woman was this quote. It's very short. He just said, he talks about this ecology of feeling, and he says there's many like positive feelings, happiness, exuberance, wonder, but with joy I want to bring into focus a durational performance of emotion, one that is caught up in an ancestral art of world making in the most asphyxiating of conditions. And basically the context of this is just kind of, I love the word durational performance. I think that like happiness or exuberance or wonder, like they kind of, I think he's basically saying that they're pretty short-lived, and some they can be long-lived, but you know, more often than not. But joy is something that you can always kind of carry forward, and if you live in a perpetual state of joy. So the second part of that is talking about joy by and for the racialized is what I consider the practice of breathing in what Christina Sharp, a theorist, calls breathtaking spaces. I think that's really important to me because as a racialized woman, there will always be instances where I feel differently. I know other people have different experiences with that as well. Also, as a person who's neurodiverse, also, you know, XYZ, but you know, whatever it is, finding opportunities to experience joy, I think that's really important. Also creating spaces that are breathtaking spaces for all people. I think that's really important. We don't recognize how much introducing yourself with your pronouns makes a difference to somebody who has pronouns that you are guessing. You know, you shouldn't be doing that. We should just be asking. It's a simple act, but things like that, they improve mental health too. So anti-oppressive practices fundamentally change people's experiences, you know, and that has a very big impact on mental health. So I think that the message I would leave people on is to also think outside ourselves. I think Shannon said, like, knock on your neighbor's door. Well, if you can't do that, go, you know, learn about how to make the world a better place for other people that don't look like you or are of your intersection of identity. You know, that's also a great way to move through this space and create breathtaking spaces for other people. So yeah, that's my little 2 cents.
Mona?
Just wanted to say that I appreciated being here and meeting the other panelists. It was really nice. And then I hope conversations like this continue because they're just so important to happen both in formal ways like this and then in a lot of informal ways as well.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Mona and Manvi, Shannon, Allison, and James for sharing your stories, your perspective, your insights. What a great conversation, and we need to have more of these conversations. So, you know, if nothing else, for those of you who have attended today, start the conversation with someone you know, start it with yourself. We learned that is really important as well. Behind the scenes of our WIT initiatives, there's so many great people at the college supporting this. It's an amazing team. Elizabeth Martin is the Associate Dean of Electrical and Computer Engineering Technology. So I'd like to ask her and Alice Rende, who's our Student WIT President, to give our closing remarks. And I want to thank everyone. It has been amazing to be part of tonight's discussion. So thank you. And Liz and Alice, I'll leave it up to you.
Well, thanks so much, Linda, for your help for this evening's event as well. And again, thanks to all the panelists. I walk away with a lot to think about and reflect on, but there are a couple of things that I caught my attention, and I want to just share one thought, which is, you know, it is National Black History Month, and I want to mention that because I know that Manvi has shared a lot about thinking outside of your box. Think about how other people are experiencing their lived experiences and what you can bring to that conversation, what you can learn from that conversation. I don't have that lived experience. I am a privileged white woman, and I acknowledge that. But I have an opportunity, as do we all, to try and understand other people's lived experiences. And part of the conversation around mental health has to include that. So and I'm not going to have something as deep or intricate as Manvi's passage, but I draw a lot of personal thought and reflective practice through authors as well. And Toni Morrison is an author who I've read for many years. And I'd just like to offer one of her constructs, which is that you are the best thing. And as we're looking at mental health and wellness, keeping that in mind, I think really can guide us in the right direction. It can have us seek how to use a lot of these tools and to seek how to help others see the value in themselves. So I'd like to thank you all for participating in that conversation. And I'd also like to talk briefly about the community. We've talked a lot about reaching out and community, and part of what we're trying to do with the WIT initiative at Mohawk is give individuals at Mohawk a chance to engage in that type of community outside of the classroom when you just need to connect or you just want to learn something new. So Lucas is sharing on the chat right now the contact for the Mohawk College. And if you're viewing this afterward, mohawkcollege.ca/ or /WITT. But we have ongoing activities like these symposiums, different tech talks, and then we have just community meetups where we're meeting up as a group of like-minded people to think about a topic and find a way to have those big introspective questions like what Manvi suggested with the journaling. You know, if you don't feel comfortable journaling, maybe just talking something out with a group of people is a way that you can find connection and a way to think outside of your box for a little while. So we'd love to have anyone who's interested in participating join us for some of those events. We're also doing outreach to the high school. So talking about the reaching back or reaching out to others to find a way to give back into the community. One of the things I wanted to mention is that we've partnered with a company called Techsploration, and Techsploration is just starting to ramp up their work in Ontario, and they're launching on March 8th an opportunity for girls in grades 9 through 12 to participate in a one-day event. And there's opportunities for people to serve as mentors and for people to serve as participants. So if you know of any young females who are thinking about their career, this is one opportunity for them to gain a little bit more insight into technology and the skilled trades activities that Shannon's been talking about. And if you're thinking about, hey, you know, is there a way for us to give back or a way to give back? That's another great opportunity for you to give back. And if you're interested, you can contact WIT or you can go to the Techsploration link that Lucas put in the chat as well. So with that, I always like to give the last word to someone other than myself. And in this case, I think what we really need to hear from is our students at Mohawk College. And so I'd like to turn it over to Alice Rende to say a student point of view to end off the evening. So thanks, Alice, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Liz. I know it's difficult dealing with all these things, especially for someone like myself who actually has mental and physical health problems. And it's so important that these things are talked about. The more conversations that we can have like this, the more we break down that barrier or that stigma, which is so important. So I really appreciate all the speakers that came today, the WIT group that did a lot of work behind the scenes. We don't see all the work that happens, we just see the finished product. And it takes a lot of work to do this, and I really appreciate that. And I could say that from the student side. And thank you, RBC, for making this possible, because it's the reason that you help and support us, that we're able to keep pushing things like this out and helping our students and creating this community. So thank you.